Hi, my name is Michelle Hanks and welcome to my channel. In this video, I am going to share our adoption story and maybe it'll inspire you to pursue adoption for your family. We have a little bit of a different story, and so I know that a lot of people go on YouTube to find other people's journeys and stories, and it kind of gives them all the feels, you know? This is part one to the video that you're about to watch. Because I talked for so long, it ended up being two parts. So set aside some time, put your earbuds in, do your laundry, and listen to my story, our story actually. And I hope that you enjoy it. I hope you learn something and that you are entertained and that you are inspired to maybe pursue adoption yourself. My husband and I got married in 1994. We were 26 and 27 years old, and we just did life, basically. We were not, I don't think we really wanted to jump into having a family right away. We were just still trying to get used to being married. And so when we did decide we wanted to have children, I think we tried for a year and it didn't work. After that, we did do some preliminary infertility testing and found that it was me. So, and back then, again, this is probably, we got married in 94. This is maybe around 97. Basically, the only solutions back then were in vitro fertilization and maybe shots, things like that. And at the time, we didn't have the extra money for doing an IVF procedure. So we figured out what was wrong with me, and they did a surgery where they tried to fix some things, and then they said, just try again. And so we did. Back then, you didn't know to research what you eat, what you put on your body, all of that stuff. You just went with what the doctor said, and you were at the mercy of them. So after, I don't know, around 1998, the stresses of infertility and the stresses of our marriage, and we were very, very different people. It was not a good place in our marriage, but we decided that we were going to become truck drivers. And so we went out over the road as team truck drivers. He drove during the day, I drove at night. That was in the end of 98 into 99. We start truck driving. We're really kind of just trying to save our marriage. Kids were way on the back burner. Like, we were just trying to stay married at that time. As truck drivers, awesome thing happened to me. I did marry my husband. He was a Christian at the time. I was not a Christian at the time when I got married. And so in 1999, I did give my life over to Jesus, which was a glorious thing. Then we started talking about kids again. So I'm telling you that to show that infertility didn't wreck our marriage, but it did add to the problems. And when we got into, I want to say, I remember where we were. It was our 8th wedding anniversary. And it was kind of the beginning. This is 2002. It's the beginning of the internet. Remember flip phones, right? So on your flip phone, in order to research anything on the World Wide Web, you had to type. You remember how you had to type, you know, ABC were under the letter 1, D, E, F were under the letter 2. And so some of you that are really, really young might not remember that. That was all I could do. That was the only way I had access to the internet at the time, because we were truck drivers. We didn't have a computer on the truck, not like we have computers on our phone now, right? And so what happened is I said, hey, our marriage is good. What, you want to talk about having kids? Don't really want to go through any procedures, so what about adoption? And he's like, sure, let's try. So I said, well, okay, I'll start doing the research. We also, at that time in 2002, we did consider foster care for a millisecond. It just didn't, at that time, it didn't feel right for us. And so that is not poo-pooing on anything in the foster care system, because there is a need for parents in foster care. But we were afraid. We were extremely afraid of what all that entailed, and then having to give a child back. And so we chose that wasn't going to be our way of pursuing adoption. So during the research phase, right, you're looking at agencies, you're looking at what is available. We start looking at international adoptions. I did get information on Russian adoptions. We started opening our mind to different things, and it really challenged us as a couple because we had to ask a lot of questions. I mean, you have to ask yourself a lot of questions when you're researching and figuring out what you want to do, figuring out what your heart is capable of. I mean, you have to be really, really honest with yourself. And each couple is going to be completely different, right? Each couple is going to have to make the choices for them. And not every single couple can do the same, right? So you don't ever feel pressured. I want to tell you, don't ever feel pressured to do it the way your friends did it, or do it the way your sister or your brother has done it. Do what's best for you as a couple. I don't believe that every single way is the perfect way for every single couple. So we decided to research international adoption. We had eliminated foster care. We had eliminated an agency. So we were kind of like, what else is there? We didn't know. Well, we ended up finding a website. This is back in 2002, that was online called christianadoption.com. And back then, they're no longer online now, but back then it was a community of Christians. We did the research, started communicating with the woman that ran the website, and that website was not an agency. That website was basically a facilitator between birth parent attorneys, adoptive parent attorneys, and this website was the middleman. And the website basically was your letter up available for anybody to research on the internet. Anybody could read our letter to a birth mother. And in adoptions, I think it is still that way today, you put together like a book, right, of pictures of your family, stories about yourself, telling characteristics of your marriage, telling how you met, the things you have in common, parts. Sometimes people include things about their grandparents or their extended family, or how much adoption is in the other parts of their family. There's a lot of interesting information that you can put in a birth mother letter. And this was brand new for us. I mean, on the internet, like, think about this. Now it's normal. But back in 2002, it wasn't the most normal thing to advertise, kind of, sort of, I guess. Sounds weird to say that, but put out there that you were looking to adopt a child. So the best part about that was it forced us, again, there's so much personal growth that came out of the adoption process for us. And I hope that you allow yourself to go through that, because your emotions will be all over the place. The majority of times, people that are walking into an adoption, they've had some pain ahead of it to get to that decision. Many times. Not always, but many times. Most times, they can't get pregnant. Something happens. Now, so I'm not talking about internal family adoptions. I'm not talking about step-parent adoptions. I'm talking about a couple can't get pregnant due to infertility, and there was pain in that knowledge. There is pain in that understanding. And then they open their hearts up to the idea of adoption. It is a process for every couple. Some, it's more easier than others. Sometimes the wife's on board before the husband, and vice versa. For us, we weren't on board together until our 8th wedding anniversary in 2002. So moving forward, we do the research, we write our letter, we get our letter put up on the interwebs, and then we wait. Now, you paid a fee at that time. You paid a fee for 1 year. And the coolest part about that was that website at the time. There were 29 other couples on. During the year, that was the most amount of couples on at one time, 29 couples. You didn't feel like you were in competition with them, though, because they were a community that were all praying for each other. We were getting updates every week on the other couples. We were getting updates every week on families now that had adopted and were going through the process of the finalizing of the adoption, because each state is different, right? And so we could ask other couples questions. We could, it was this community, kind of small at the time, that was specific to this one heart story, right? This story of pain turning into hope, and then turning into elation because a baby or babies have joined the family. And the kinds of adoptions that you ended up hearing about were all over the place, right? There were couples on there that actually adopted internationally. There were couples on there that adopted special needs. There were couples on there that adopted children of a different race, right, into their family. It was adoptions that were private, adoptions that were domestic, that might have a little bit more involvement with the birth mother. There was a variety to learn from. And the thing about this community, it was very tight, right? It was extremely tight for the fact that we all paid to be there. We all chose to go through the internet to pursue an adoption of a child. We had a lot in common. So it was kind of like the beginning of a Facebook group, actually. I don't know. It's a nice time. It's a nice memory of mine. And just know that being in community with like-minded people is important. Do not go through this on your own. So after getting our letter up on the internet, we were just waiting, right? You have to go through the process. For adoption, you have to have fingerprinting done. You have to have, back then, you had to have HIV testing done. You have to have a home study done. You have to do all these questionnaires. They have to, check your house out. All of this stuff. And we've often said that if most parents had to go through that, especially some younger parents, that they might think twice, because it was quite an undertaking, I will say, worth every minute and every penny, but it is a lot of intrusion on your privacy. They want to know how you're going to handle certain things. There's a lot of curiosity into who you are as a person because the welfare of that child. All right, so we go and we put our letter up on the internet, and we, let me think, that was in 2003, January of 2003. Our wedding anniversary was October of 2002. We started doing all the stuff we needed to do, made the decision to go on to ChristianAdoption.com, paid her in December of 2002, got our letter ready, and it was actually up on the interwebs, January of 2003. And we had a year, basically, right? So we waited, we learned, we decided to paint the room. And that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to believe by faith that we had a baby coming. At the time, we were praying for a baby boy. I will not tell people to not pray for a specific gender, but most everybody else will tell you not to pray for a specific gender. At the time, that's just where our heart was leaning. And I was buying baby boy clothes left and right. But when we painted the room, we chose neutral colors. So the room was green, and it had red and white accents, and it was frogs. So that could go boy or girl. And we did that. I think we painted that bedroom prepared for a baby. We did the chair, we did the changing table, we did the crib, we did all the accessories, all the painting, everything, probably by May of 2003. Like, we were prepared. Like, we knew we had to be ready for a baby coming. That's just a way we walked out our faith. And I inspire you, I hope for you that you will do the same thing. Act like that baby is coming. It helps with the worrying. It helps with the what ifs. It helps every time you got a call about maybe a baby available or this situation might sound good, or any of that. It helps to know that God has a child specifically for you. And maybe that's more than one child. In our family, I don't know. I feel we only have one child. And so I don't feel like I ever really I didn't grow up wanting a humongous family, but I also didn't say I want no children. Never said I never picked a number. So, but I do believe that there are women that have the grace of God on them to raise more than one. God has given me all the grace I have requested and more to be the mom that I am today. All right, I wanted to be an inspiration to others, because when you're with this group of people that are yearning for a baby, there's a lot of pain and crying in the waiting. And if you're waiting and you're hurting, just know that God has a plan for you. God has a plan for that baby or babies, okay? It will happen. She or he will come. You just have to be patient. I want you so much to know in your heart that I'm speaking directly to you right now. Your baby is coming. He or she will be here soon. Get prepared. Get prepared in your heart. Open your mind and your eyes to all the possibilities that God has for you. All right. Okay. I hope that spoke to somebody. Okay. So come around November 2003, we were kind of just frustrated we still didn't have an answer, and we're coming to the end of our 1-year paid subscription, kind of like on this website. And we were actually offered a child. It was a little boy. And at the time, we were in such a panic. We didn't think that, we didn't have peace that he was our child. And I know that sounds weird, doesn't it? Like you're waiting and waiting and waiting for a baby, and then you finally have an opportunity, and it just, I don't know. We had set up a few parameters that we were willing to work with and not willing to work with, and it makes it sound like we were controlling everything, but there just wasn't any peace about it. Well, it's interesting because a few of our friends that we had met on the website, they ended up adopting that little boy. And so we've gotten to see him grow up. And it's amazing that he was meant for their family. And what's really cool is when you see it that way, when you see that God has specific children destined for specific families, it's a different way to look at it. And you're okay. You're okay. You know that was best for him, best for them, best for us. And God wants the best for all of us. And I would say it was a couple weeks later, in November of 2000, we got a phone call from the facilitator, and she said, a birth mother has contacted us. This must have been within the same week we were on. I'm kind of getting confused here because she had to have read our letter. So the facilitator, again, she's not an agency, but she was the person a birth mother would call and get information from, and then she would start putting people together. We still had to have attorneys. We still had to have home studies. We still had to have all of that stuff. It did not go through her because she wasn't an agency, but we relied on her for information. And so The birth mother called her and said, I like this couple, blah, blah, blah. And she, blah, blah, blah is my way of not giving all the details. She had situations in her family environment that she had to get taken care of before she could pursue adoption. That's the best way I'm going to say it. Because it's private information. And I know that you understand that, because your adoption, there will be pieces to it that are private. We said, you know what? We'll pray for her. And that was it. At the time, there was no... We didn't hear anything from God. We didn't hear anything in our spirits. We didn't feel anything that told us that this was our child. But we wanted to pray for this birth mother because that was part of the deal. We wanted to pray for birth mothers because this is a humongous decision for them to make, right? And we didn't really learn that much information about her at the time, actually. And so we then pulled our letter off the internet. We then really worked hard at what are we going to do? When a baby comes, we have to be prepared because we can't be truck drivers. And so we chose to start a business staining concrete. So this now goes on into 2004. And March 2004, we had rewritten our letter. We were prepared. We knew what we were going to do. We were going to start a business doing concrete staining. And whenever a baby came, like we didn't have a date, right? We weren't matched with anybody. So we just knew we finally had an answer. So we could make ourselves available again on the internet. And I called the facilitator and I said, I emailed you our new letter. I would love for you to read it and then let me know if I need to tweak anything. Because we had changed, at that time we had thought we hadn't been contacted because something was amiss with our letter, right? That our letter didn't communicate who we are. I mean, that's in the sense where you're trying to fix things that you think might be broken, but they're not. It's all in God's timing. That's the way it is for our life. And so I call her and she says, I tell her that, like, when I call people, I go, hello, and I go right into the conversation. I don't even give them an opportunity to start talking. As you can tell, I talk a lot. And she says, well, hold on, because I need to tell you something. And I'm like, okay. And she said, well, do you remember that birth mother back in November? And I said, yes. And she said, well, she's called me back. She called back yesterday. And I was like, okay. And she said, well, she asked me where your letter was. And I told her that you guys were figuring some things out and that you had pulled your letter off of the internet, but you were still available. And she said, well, I would like for the birth father to read their letter. Can you make it available on the internet for him to read? And she said, yes, I can do that, behind the scenes, right? And so she creates a link for this birth father to read our letter, and he agreed to the choice of us as a couple. And so she needed to tell us that we have a baby coming. We're matched with a birth mother. And I'm like, wait, whoa. What are you talking about? Like, what? You're screaming and you're like, whoa, hold on. I need all the details. And so she said, your birth mother lives in this city and she has a scheduled C-section for this date. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I apologize for it being so long. Okay. I've stopped and started this video about 16 times. And part of it is because I'm a perfectionist and I'm wanting to get everything right. The right lighting, the right mood, the right mental state, everything. I will say that I've said that a million times. Stop repeating yourself. Okay, I just need to shoot it. So here goes. All right, I don't want to start off with that. In this video, we are going, that was nice, rub your eye. Right. So let me set my watch so that I know that I am only, whoop, that's not going to work.